When I pulled up to my cabin and saw moving trucks in the driveway, I thought I'd gotten the wrong address, until I saw Karen's son waving from my porch swing. He had his shoes kicked up on the railing, a soda in one hand, and the kind of smirk only a 20-something freeloader can pull off. My porch swing, my cabin, my family's name etched in the wood beam above the door. For a moment, my brain refused to process it. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was Clarissa Morton's doing. Clarissa, our HOA president, who wore pearls to grocery shop and wielded bylaws like they were scripture. The whispers had always been there. How she treated the HOA like her personal fiefdom. How every board decision just happened to benefit her circle of friends. But this? Handing my property over to her son like it was a birthday gift? That was a new low. I killed the engine, slammed the door shut, and the scent of pine needles hit me, sharp and grounding. This cabin wasn't just a weekend retreat. It was where my grandfather taught me to fish, where my mother painted her last landscapes, where every plank of wood carried family history. Seeing strangers' boxes stacked on the porch made my chest tighten like I'd been sucker punched. I marched up the steps. "Excuse me," I said, voice flat, dangerously calm. The kid barely looked up. "Yeah? You need something?" "I need you off my porch," I said. He grinned. "Mom said this place is ours now. HOA reassignment, community property or something." My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Community property. That was Clarissa's favorite buzzword, and I knew exactly where it came from. Section 3, Article 14 of the HOA bylaws, a dusty clause about shared community resources. It was meant for the clubhouse and the tennis courts, not private homes, not my cabin. Still, I swallowed the urge to explode. Clarissa thrived on confrontation. That's how she kept neighbors cowed, by making a scene, by making them doubt themselves in the heat of the moment. Not me. Not today. So I forced a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Enjoy your soda," I said. "I'll be seeing your mother soon." I turned on my heel and walked back to my car, every muscle in my body buzzing with fury. The drive home was a blur. My phone was already filling with messages. Neighbors whispering in hushed tones, "Did you know Clarissa gave your cabin to her son? She says the board approved it. We didn't even vote on it." That was the thing about Clarissa. She didn't need votes when she had fear. Most folks in the HOA just nodded along because it was easier than fighting. She knew how to bury people in violation notices until they folded. But me? I had something stronger. I had receipts. The first thing I did when I got back was pull out my lockbox. Inside were every deed, every HOA letter, every scrap of paper tied to that cabin. Clarissa might have her inner circle clapping like trained seals, but I had documentation. Still, I knew better than to march into her office screaming. That's what she wanted, for me to look unhinged, unreasonable. So instead, I started small. I showed up at the next HOA informal meeting. Clarissa sat at the head of the long table, pearls catching the light, gavel resting like a weapon beside her coffee cup. Her son lounged in the corner, as if daring me to cause a scene. "Clarissa," I said evenly, sliding a copy of my cabin deed onto the table. "Care to explain why my property's been reallocated?" Her smile didn't falter. "It's simple, really. The bylaws state that underutilized community assets can be reassigned for the benefit of the association. You've hardly used that cabin in years. My son, however, will maintain it, improve it. It's best for everyone." Gasps rippled through the room. Everyone knew that was nonsense, but no one wanted to be the one to call it. Clarissa thrived on silence. I leaned forward. "That cabin has never been, and will never be, community property. It's mine. You don't get to gift it away like a fruit basket." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "Then perhaps you should prepare for a board review. I'd hate for this to escalate into fines or further action." It was a threat. A bluff, but a threat nonetheless. I stood, gathering my papers. "Go ahead, Review whatever you like. Just know I've already started a file. Every notice, every so-called vote, every overreach. And when this goes beyond the HOA, let's just say your pearls won't save you." The room went still. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her expression. That was my mini-climax. I wasn't just another neighbor she could bulldoze. But I knew this wasn't over. As I walked out, Clarissa's son called after me with a laugh. "Better hurry if you want your stuff. Movers are coming tomorrow." My hand tightened around the door frame. Movers. Tomorrow. Clarissa wasn't bluffing anymore. She was doubling down, and I wasn't about to let her steal my cabin without a fight. Clarissa slammed her binder shut at the HOA meeting and declared, "The cabin belongs to community use, and my son is the caretaker." The sound echoed off the community center walls like a judge's gavel, final and absolute. Her son smirked from the back row, arms crossed like he'd just inherited an empire. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then the clapping started. Polite at first, then louder as her inner circle joined in, the way you applaud a bad play because the director is staring right at you. My pulse hammered in my ears. They were eating it up. The lie, the arrogance, the sheer audacity of it all. I shot to my feet. "That's not how property works," I said, voice sharp enough to slice through the applause. "You can't just gift my family's cabin because you feel like rewriting history." Clarissa didn't even flinch. She leaned back in her chair, pearls catching the fluorescent light, and tilted her chin like a queen entertaining a foolish subject. "Disruptive comments will not be tolerated. Please sit down." I didn't. Let me backtrack a bit. In the days leading up to this circus, the cabin had become a crime scene of quiet invasions. One morning, I arrived to find the locks changed, the brass shining new in the morning sun. Another day, I spotted a blinking red light tucked under the eaves, security cameras pointing outward like watchful eyes. And then came the final insult. A shiny new mailbox planted by the gravel drive, my family's nameplate ripped off, replaced with her son's in tacky plastic letters. Every change smelled like Clarissa's perfume, powdery, cloying, impossible to ignore. Each violation screamed louder than the last, but I didn't rip out the cameras or the mailbox. I photographed them, documented them, because Clarissa thought intimidation would make me snap. Instead, it gave me ammunition, and here, at this meeting, she thought she could steamroll me with her binder of interpretations. "Show me the clause," I demanded, stepping closer to the table. "Show me where in the bylaws it says private property can be reassigned." Clarissa tapped the binder with one manicured nail. Section 3, Article 14. Community assets may be reallocated for the benefit of the association. A ripple of approval swept her supporters. I snatched the binder, flipped it open, and jabbed at the page. Clubhouse, tennis courts, pool. Nowhere does it say private homes or cabins. Her smile didn't falter. "Interpretation is at the discretion of the board." "That's not interpretation. That's theft." The word landed like a stone dropped in water. Neighbors shifted in their seats. Some looked down, others leaned forward, hungry for drama. Clarissa thrived in this space, twisting gray areas into her own law, turning silence into complicity. Patricia, her right-hand Karen, piped up from the front row. "You should be grateful, really. Your cabin will finally be put to good use. It's been sitting there for years, neglected." "Neglected?" I barked a laugh. "I was there last week. The place is spotless. The only neglect is the board ignoring property rights." "Order," Clarissa snapped, slamming her binder again. But for the first time, I saw cracks. A few neighbors nodded with me, whispering. The narrative wasn't airtight anymore. That was my mini-climax. The moment I realized her grip on the room wasn't absolute. Still, Clarissa knew how to cut me off. She wrapped things up with her usual flair, calling the matter resolved pending board action. Everyone knew that was code for, "I'll do what I want and you'll deal with it later." I walked out of that meeting with heat rising in my chest, the evening air biting cold against my skin. But anger wasn't all I carried. I had photos of the new locks, the mailbox, the cameras, copies of every notice she'd sent, and a recording of her, in her own words, declaring my cabin community property. Clarissa thought her binder was the final word. She didn't realize I was building a case far bigger than her HOA table could contain. That night, as I drove past the cabin, headlights caught the glint of fresh paint on the porch. Her son's doing, no doubt, marking territory that wasn't his. My stomach twisted, but I didn't stop. Not yet. Because the more she smiled, the more she lied, the deeper she dug her hole. And when the right people showed up to look inside it. Clarissa Morton wouldn't just lose my cabin, she'd lose everything. The look on Clarissa's face when the FBI showed up wasn't fear, it was confusion, the kind only comes when you realize you've been playing queen on a board you don't own. Her son froze mid-laugh, red Solo cup dangling in his hand, as black SUVs rolled down the gravel drive like wolves circling prey. The music cut, conversations died, and for the first time in months the cabin fell silent enough to hear the creek running in the distance. I leaned against my car at the edge of the property, arms crossed, watching her empire crack. Clarissa's pearls caught the floodlights as she stammered, "This is private property, my son's property." But the agents weren't listening. They already knew the truth. Let me rewind. Clarissa's takeover had grown bolder by the week. The new locks, the mailbox, the cameras, those were just the opening act. Then came the furniture deliveries, the landscaping crew, the caretaker title she paraded at every HOA meeting. She told anyone who'd listen that her son was turning the cabin into a community hub. In reality, it was his weekend party house, stocked with cheap beer and blaring speakers that rattled down the wooded road. Neighbors whispered, but they didn't dare challenge her. Not until the keggers started. Not until the noise, the traffic, the trash made it impossible to ignore. Even then, people came to me in hushed tones. "Do you think she really owns it now? Are we allowed to complain?" Clarissa's bluff was working. What she didn't know was that her entire stunt sat on a landmine. Literally. Years ago, before Clarissa even ran for the HOA board, I'd agreed to a quiet arrangement with the county. A portion of the land behind the cabin was leased to a federal agency for training use. It was simple paperwork, tucked neatly into the deed, a clause no one but me and the county clerk seemed to care about. Clarissa never checked. She just assumed everything fell under her pearl-clad thumb. So, when I heard her son was throwing his biggest bash yet, I made a call. Not to the HOA, not to the sheriff. Higher. That night, I parked down the road watching headlights flicker between the pines. The bass thumped, kids hollered, and the smell of bonfire smoke drifted into the crisp mountain air. I knew exactly how it would end, and still, my heart pounded with anticipation. When the black SUVs pulled in, it was like the air itself snapped. Doors slammed. Agents fanned out with flashlights cutting through the dark. Clarissa stepped forward, still trying to play queen. "This is private," she barked. "You can't just barge onto property owned by the HOA." One agent leveled her with a look that could have curdled milk. "Ma'am, this land is under federal lease. You and your son are trespassing." Gasps rippled through the party crowd. Red cups hit the dirt. Clarissa sputtered, reaching for her binder of bylaws as if waving it might rewrite reality. "There must be some mistake. This was assigned." "No mistake," I cut in, finally stepping into the light. "I told you, that cabin was never yours to give." Her eyes snapped to me, fury and panic mingling like oil and fire. "You." But the agent cut her off. "Ma'am, we'll need you to step aside. You've interfered with federal property. That carries consequences." The mini-climax hit like a thunderclap. Clarissa, who'd strutted through every HOA meeting with smug certainty, stood pale and shaking while her son pleaded with the agents that Mom said it was fine. Neighbors who'd been too afraid to cross her now watched openly from the tree line. whispers carrying in the cool night air. I'll admit I savored it. The agents began cataloging the mess. The beer cans littering the porch, the locks changed without authorization, the cameras installed without permission. Every smug move Clarissa had made became evidence. Fraudulent transfer, harassment, tampering with property she didn't own. She tried one last swing. "You can't fine me. I'm the president of this association." The agent barely looked up from his clipboard. "We're not talking fines, we're talking charges." Her pearls trembled at her throat. For the first time, Clarissa looked small. By midnight, the crowd was gone, the trucks were gone, and the cabin was quiet again. Agents secured the site, handing me a nod of respect. One leaned close and said, "Appreciate your cooperation. You saved us a lot of trouble letting this play out." I just smiled, glad I could help. When I turned back, Clarissa was sitting on a folding chair in the driveway, mascara smudged, board members whispering behind their hands. Her reign wasn't just cracked, it was over. The cabin stood steady, lantern light flickering against its cedar walls, as if my grandfather himself were standing guard. I knew it was safe now, more than ever. But Clarissa? She was about to face consequences she couldn't charm her way out of. And as I drove away, tires crunching over gravel, one thought stuck with me. In this neighborhood, power had always been an illusion. Clarissa just learned the hard way what happens when you play queen on a board you don't own.